Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's great to have you, everyone, here. We'll be starting in around 3 minutes. Just waiting for everyone to join, so feel free to drop a hi and tell us where you're from. France, Norway, Canada. It's great to have you, everyone. We're based in France, so hello from France. Poland, Ireland, Belgium, Guatemala. Awesome. So there are representations of from every part of the world. Glad to have you here. Awesome. How are you doing today, Alexis?
I'm doing fine, thank you. And you?
I'm doing good, thanks. So let's just wait around 1 minute. It's 15 and 2. One final minute until everyone joins us, and then we can start. Welcome, everyone. So it's 15 and 3. Let's start. So hello, everyone, again. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for joining us today. This is our first session of P1 Security's VKB webinar series. We just started it, so this is the first time we're doing this. We will be diving into some real-world telecom vulnerabilities from our VKB. VKB stands for Vulnerability Knowledge Base, for the ones who don't know it. So our goal is to give you some closer looks at the security threats that P1 Security Team finds, and more importantly, we will teach you how to defend against them. So today, we will be tackling the vulnerability number 2049, a critical security flaw in the 5G core network. And leading the session with me is Alexis Vernet, a telecom offensive security expert at P1 Security. He'll break down the danger of this vuln, its impact on the 5G core network, and he will teach you how to mitigate the risks. So before we start, just note that this webinar is recorded, so you can rewatch it or share it with your team later if you wish to. And of course, feel free to drop your questions throughout the whole session. And at the end, we will tackle them at the Q&A session. So Alexi, let's get started. What do you have for us today?
Okay, great. Welcome everyone. I'm going to present you the first VKB series number 1, which is concerning the vulnerability number 2049. The VKB stands for Vulnerability Knowledge Base, which is a database of vulnerabilities in telecom infrastructure. The VID, the vulnerability ID, is 2049 in our database, in our VKB, and which is named CNF run with privileged security context. In order to introduce this vulnerability, first I'm going to talk about the VKB. Then after I'm going to describe what is the vulnerability number 2049. And then I'm going to describe it and to make a technical overview about it. Then after that, we are going to talk about the scope of impact, the root cause analysis, the risk assessment, and the most important of all, the remediation plan. First of all, my name is Alexis Vernet. I'm a penetration tester at P1 Security. I have performed many audits and penetration testing with P1, and I'm a critical infrastructure passionate. During my assessments, we compromise a cluster from network access, and we also perform some fuzzing on signaling interface and CLI. Let's talk about the vulnerability knowledge base. The VKB was created in 2011, and it contains more than 2,300 vulnerabilities. It is built for telecommunication, and also it is trusted by operator and nation states. How can we find so much vulnerabilities? Through penetration testing and research. And it allows us, and it allows you to keep you up to date with new vulnerability, provide remediation plan to keep you safe, improve overall security awareness. Indeed, first to know, first to act. If you are aware of a vulnerability that is present in your telecom infrastructure thanks to the VKB, you are able to patch it before an attacker exploits it. Let's talk about the CNF run with privileged security context. First of all, in order to talk about the CNF, so a container of a network function, we are going to introduce what is Kubernetes. Kubernetes empowers telecom companies to modernize network, accelerate service delivery, and enhance scalability through container orchestration. The CNF is a container that is hosted on Kubernetes environment. And the CNF running on the Kubernetes cluster have an insecurity context means some pods are running with the privilege flag set to true, which has many implications about security, such as business impact, escalated attack. An attacker within a pod could escalate to the host, gaining broader access and control. Bypass security, security measures, container isolation and network segmentation can be easily bypassed, leading to vulnerabilities. Indeed, because there are privileged pods, we can bound the file system of the host, which is often the worker. The worker contains the pods, and therefore we can bypass the container isolation. We can escalate to the host, the worker, and network segmentation, and bypass network segmentation. Also, we can pivot to other systems, for example, the worker or many others, such as the manager if there is a misconfiguration. Attackers can compromise other CNF, VNFs, spread their reach across your infrastructure. Indeed, because you can grab more information also in order to compromise other managers, for example. And also service disruption. This could result in a major service outage leading to costly downtime and loss of revenue. Indeed, because the container is holding the network function, therefore you can impact directly the network function, and therefore you can have a service disruption on it. This vulnerability was discovered in 2021, 18th November. First, we are going to talk about the keychain. But what is a keychain? It's a succession of exploitation techniques that allow to spread in the telecom infrastructure. For example, in the keychain, there is several phases such as reconnaissance, reckoning. After that, there is exploitation of vulnerability. After that, there is privilege escalation. After that, lateral movement. It's a cycle process. Therefore, once we make a lateral movement, we again do some reconnaissance, we again do some exploitation, and we again make some privilege escalation. And now we are going to talk about a keychain regarding a, a privilege pod. Compromising a privilege pod or the worker node itself leads to cluster-wide privilege escalation, potentially compromises the manager and the entire Kubernetes environment. Indeed, from the pod, we can mount the file system of the worker and find a vulnerability in it to compromise the manager. Sometimes, by mounting the file system of the host, it could happen that is directly the manager if there is a misconfiguration. Therefore, you don't need even to grab some information in order to compromise the manager. We can see that there is a lot of risk regarding privilege pod. Indeed, the privilege pod contains the containers and which are hosted on a worker node, which interact with the control plane, which means the manager, which contain API server, etcd, and so on. Therefore, by compromising a privilege pod, you can compromise the worker node directly. Let's talk now about a kill chain that we realized during one of our penetration testing with one of our customers. First of all, we need audit prerequisites, or an attacker need prerequisites in order to access to the telecom infrastructure. First, you need access to 5G network. The access can be installed on the darknet or leasing by roaming partner or from countries with slow regulation. Once we have access, our purpose is going to have an initial foothold on the pods. For example, a remote code execution on OIM pods, which means having a shell with a standard account, for example, but it could be directly if there is no least privilege policy, a root account directly. Once we have a shell with a standard account, our purpose will be to make some privilege escalation. For example, a privilege escalation through cron. A privilege escalation allows us to become root and having full access on the pod. For example, here, let's say we have a word readable script that is executable as root on cron job. But first, what is a cron job? A cron job is a scheduled task that will execute some scripts as requested in our configuration. But here, let's say that there is a vulnerability because the script which is execute as root on the cron job is word readable, which means every user on the system can modify it. For example, our standard account. So the standard account just need to modify the script, adding a backdoor or a reverse shell, for example, and therefore, once the cron job executes the script, we get root shell access. Once we are root on the machine, let's compromise the secrets, for example, of another namespace through service account, because now we can access to /var/run/secret/kubernetes/service account/token. And therefore we can steal a service account token. But what is a service account? A service account is an account that allows a pod to interact with Kubernetes API. For example, if it needs to request some secrets that are stored in Kubernetes API. So we exploit this service account token in order to list the RBAC, the role-based access control, in order to find another vulnerability in it. So let's say we find in the secrets another service account token of another namespace that will allow us to, for example, compromise another namespace. Thanks to that, let's say we list the RBAC with a new service account token, and we notice that there is a privilege pod. Therefore, we can compromise the node, because compromise the privilege pod leads to compromise the worker, the host. by mounting the file system of the worker and find secrets to compromise the whole cluster. But for example, also, it happens that the service account token has full privileges on the namespace, such as creating a privilege pod. Therefore, even if there is no privilege pod on to compromise, it's possible to create one in order to compromise the cluster. Once we have compromised the worker, we can grab some credentials in it in order to compromise the manager, in order to compromise all the cluster. Now we are going to talk about the technical description. By default, a container is not allowed to access any device on the host, but a privileged container is given access to all devices on the host. This allows the container nearly all the same access as processes running on the host. Indeed, by mounting the file system of the worker of the host, it's like having root shell access on the worker, because we can set up a backdoor in it, which will be triggered, for example, with a cron job, in order to have a reversion in it. This is useful for containers that want to use Linux capabilities. Indeed, a privileged pod it's a pod with a lot of capabilities, such as capsysadmin, capsys-ptrace, capsys-module, capdac research, capdac override, and many more, like manipulating the network stack and accessing devices. But what is a capability? A capability, it's a set of root permission for specific task. For example, capsysadmin allows to mount and unmount with root privilege storage devices. Capsys-ptrace allows to debug some processes with root privileges. Capsysadmin allows to load or unload kernel modules. Capdac research allows to read and search for any file on the file system. Capdac override to bypass the discretionary access control in order to have access to every file. A user on a privileged pod is able to access the host device, such as the storage devices. Accessing the host storage is a vector to escalate privileges and escape from the pod. Indeed, as I mentioned before, mounting the file system of the host means it's like having root shell access on the host, because you can modify all the file system. In order to list the storage devices, you can use the command lsbl key. As we can see below, there is two file systems, VDA1, VDA2, with 199 gigabytes. Privileged pod instance by deployment can be found using the kubeaudit tool or with the command kubectl-n namespace get pod name -o-json within the security context with the flag privilege set to true. Indeed, there are two ways in order to list the privileged pods. You can use kubeaudit with the command kubeaudit privilege-n default-m error pipe grep container. As we can see below, there is many privileged pods, such as AMF-CNF-0 and so on. Or you can use the command line kubectl-n namespace and so on. Within the output of the JSON output that you will get with the kubectl command, you need to look for security context and the flag privilege set to true. If there is a privilege flag set to true, it means it's a privileged pod. Let's talk about the scope of impact. The affected perimeter is a 5G core network. Indeed, the network functions are present in it. The affected equipment, as we mentioned before, are the CNF, the containers network function. And finally, the affected equipment function is Kubernetes, because we can compromise the whole cluster also. Let's talk about the root cause analysis. The root cause is the fact that the software does not properly assign, modify, track, or check privileges for an actor, creating an unintended sphere of control for that actor. Indeed, there is two reasons of the root cause here. The first one is the fact that you need to review and check the privileges of the pods. And the second one is a misconfiguration. The root cause category, according to Common Weaknesses Exposure, number 269, is improper privilege management. Finally, let's talk about the risk assessment. The risk assessment is the risk level is considered as high indeed, because it's really probable if there is this kind of vulnerability that an attacker will use it. The difficult to obtain, on the other hand, is moderate because an attacker needs access to the 5G core network. And finally, the impact is high indeed because it undermines the availability, the integrity, and the confidentiality at high levels. Indeed, we can compromise a cluster with that. The threat level is low. Why? Because we are not aware of any public announcement or malicious use of the vulnerabilities that is described in this advisory. But we managed to exploit this vulnerability during one of our penetration testing. Therefore, it's doable. Therefore, an attacker with this knowledge can do so. And now the most important part, how to remediate this vulnerability. There are several actions that we can perform. The first one is use policy security admission to disable privileged pods. Indeed, policy security admission is a security feature in the namespace that allows us to prevent a privileged pod from being deployed thanks to the parameter enforced and restricted. After that, you can intervene by reducing the capabilities, by restricting, hardening the capabilities. The container should never be run in privilege mode and shouldn't have certain okay.
Yes,
Therefore,
Alex, you can hear.
great. Sorry for that. The container should never be run in privilege mode and shouldn't have certain capabilities, such as capsys admin, capsys ptrace, capsys module, capdc research, capdc override, and many more. You can therefore harden your system, your pods, by removing these capabilities from being used on the pods. And after that, it's also recommended, if possible, to put privilege values set to false and to audit containers with tools such as kubeaudit, or you can do it with kubectl also. And finally, you can prevent the service account token to have full privileges on RBAC within the cluster, such as creating pod, executing pods, and so on. Indeed, as I mentioned during the kill chain, it was possible to create some privilege pod because the service account token has had full privilege in it. In conclusion, privilege pods represent a risk to compromise the whole cluster and therefore the network function, because we are talking about container of network function. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexi, for this great presentation and very exhaustive presentation. That's very technical. Thank you again. So before we move on, we know that keeping up with all these vulnerabilities in the VKB and the telecom network is a very big challenge. I mean, the VKB alone has more than 2,300 vulnerabilities and counting. We add 5+ each month, and it's packed with features, and navigating it is very overwhelming. So that's where P1 Security comes in. We offer vulnerability intelligence as a service to help you stay on top of the evolving threats, without drowning in the data, and we deliver intelligence using property tools, and we ensure that you're aligned with the regulations from 3GPP, GSMA, and others. And with our telecom security experts, technology tools, and direct involvement in this with the security bodies, we make sure that you're not just compliant, but also secure. And we provide you with monthly missions. So now, thank you all for coming. Do not hesitate to ask any questions that you have. Alexis is here to tackle them all. We're just checking the chat if you have any questions.
Yes, indeed, we have many questions. So, for example, is there a legitimate case for privileged pod, or is just a misconfiguration? A lot of vendors, in order to to act on a signaling plane and OIM, use sometimes privileged pods, but it's not mandatory. It's just easier to do that way because in order to configure it more easily. But usually a privileged pod shouldn't be deployed, and it's possible to work on signaling plane and management plane without having a privileged pod. It's perfectly doable. We saw that on many vendors also. PSA is just enough to be secure on that film. It's recommended to intervene on different aspects, because if there is a misconfiguration by a sysadmin, for example, the PSA will maybe not be applied anymore, and therefore you have privileged pod that are that can be deployed after that. And thank you for the comment. I do agree. This is this is not only related to 5G core network only. Do we have more questions? So you can find many versions of kernels. It depends of the vendor and dependent of the version of the vendor. I didn't get, sorry, the question. So what is the single point of weakness? Could you elaborate more the question, please? Patrick? Yes, indeed. But I didn't get the question. I'm sorry, I cannot disclose. Do you know if Ericsson or Nokia in their 5G core have privileged pods by design? I'm sorry for. I cannot disclose this kind of information. Indeed, during our assessment, if even if we can find this kind of equipment, we cannot disclose the fact that if there is a privileged pod on these vendors or not. Yes, indeed. It's difficult for subscribers to exploit, but the telco engineers indeed are already targets of state sponsor hacking, and they will have access. Yes, of course, it's possible that telco engineers, because they are target, they can give in some credentials or everything. It's why it's important to protect. During our penetration testing, we during my penetration testing at P1 Security, I didn't. I already have access to the 5G core network. Therefore, I didn't need to find a way to in the 5G core network. But this is a kind of services that we provide also as a penetration testing. It's possible. It's possible to have access to 5G core from a UE. Yes, indeed. If you want, Patrick, I can I can exchange with you during this matter. Can you give me your email or something that I can provide you the answer later?
Thank you, everyone, for your questions. I hope Alexis was very clear in his answers. Before we close the call, do not hesitate to let us know that in the next version of this VKB series, tell us which protocol you want the next vulnerability to be about. We always appreciate your feedback. Also, do not hesitate to contact us. You have the QR code for our contact page from our website, as well as our contact email. So if you have any additional questions or any additional add-ons to add, do not hesitate to contact us, and we will be sure to reply and continue our discussion there. Thanks again, Alexis, for this presentation. Thanks for being here today. And thank you, everyone, for your continuous support and for being here with us today. And have an amazing rest of the day or rest of the night, depending where you're from. And goodbye.
Goodbye.